Hello! Around the time that this video goes live, the entire Final Fantasy set should have been spoiled. If you have any of those cards that you want to see on this channel, the donation deck list queue is absolutely open to taking those deck lists now so I can have a little bit of time to work on them before official release. Hello folks, Phil Gallagher aka ThrabenU here for another Legacy video. Full disclosure, I'm going to record this deck tech right now while my head is still in the game of where I crafted it, but I am a little sick right now, so I'm going to wait a little bit to record the League. The doctor gave me the good cough syrup, and we're feeling it. So while I am comfortable talking about the strategy of the deck, we're gonna wait on gameplay until tomorrow. So, Tyranitar Vox, or maybe Tyranitar Wox, Wokes if we're using Latin pronunciation, because trivia of the day, Wokes is the Latin word that means voice. Sent along this deck list, which I've made some small changes to. We're going to be playing Soldier Stompy today, or tomorrow for me, but today for you. Time, it's a wibbly-wobbly thing. And their build is pretty interesting, honestly. So, Soldiers historically tends to be built as a deck with a bunch of lock pieces. You build it with some number of Thorn of Amethyst or Chalice of the Void, or maybe even Suppression Field, as a way to bridge the game to your soldiers that can take over the game. And we'll talk about them in a second. But the approach here is different. This deck is playing a bunch of 1-drops, partially because it wants to fit an Urza Saga package into the deck, which is a way that I don't think I have played Soldiers before. And this is a pretty unique take on the deck. It's not groundbreaking in that, Ancient Tomb plus things that cost 2 colorless and 1 colored pip, plus Urza Saga, that is a formula that is wildly successful in Legacy, but I haven't seen it done with Soldiers before specifically. At least not in my hands. Now, Soldiers as an archetype did take a hit with the printing of Orcish Bowmasters, because a bunch of the things that you want to be playing in this deck are X1 creatures, or are otherwise creatures that might die to an Orcish Bowmasters in combat. Between the pinging and the 2 bodies that can block, some of these smaller creatures just aren't going to do great in combat versus them. And Tyranitar's original list actually, I think, only had 1 or 2 Thalias. But the biggest problem that I had with their original list was it was somewhere on the order of 24 creatures. And if you want to be consistent with cards like Enlistment Officer and Collected Company that look at the top X number of cards and reveal cards of a certain type, you really want to maximize on the number of cards you play that are hits. So I wanted to bump the creature count up. In looking at some of my older versions of this deck, I was rocking around 30 creatures. I wasn't able to get the count that high while still keeping the core idea of this deck intact, that is, play 1-drops and Urza Saga. I think if you are trying to accomplish both of those things, you probably cap out somewhere around here. The original deck list had 20 lands and 3 copies of Eagles of the North. Eagles of the North, I don't think makes sense in this deck. Let's pull that up real quick. While I think in this deck you are perfectly happy with the plane cycling aspect, I don't think this deck wants to be casting a 3/3 flyer come the late game. And honestly, I don't even know that your mana is going to support you getting to 6 all that often, because we are going to have disappearing Urza Sagas, and we are going to have some very, very, very appealing Wasteland targets that our opponent will be aggressively going after. So I removed 1 Eagles for another land, and I removed another 2 Eagles for just more soldiers, again, for the hits for Enlistment Officer. Tyranitar was very interested in 2 cards in the context of Soldier Stompy, and this was the first. ORIM'S Chant is the second. We'll talk about that one in a second. I don't think you can play a card that looks like this in Legacy anymore. This is something that dies to Orcish Bowmasters, This is something that is not a singularly powerful card. And if we take a look at the mana base here, and this is going to sound kind of absurd, but the single white cost is actually very real in this deck. The Ancient Tombs, the Cavern of Souls, and the Urza's Sagas mean that a ton of your lands don't actually allow you to activate this ability. So while on paper it might sound kind of cool to tap down a Murktide Regent, in practice there are going to be plenty of games where you don't have double white. Well, Phil, that costs 1 white to activate. Why are you talking about double white? Okay, great question, Timmy. I'm talking about double white because if you use your single white pip to activate this, you are not deploying any of the cards in your deck on that same turn. And although we have some mana sinks in the form of Urza's Saga, we don't have other cards like Rishadenport baked into this mana base that will just give us other things to do with our non-white mana. And so I think I just can't, in good faith, just throw that into a legacy deck list and go. It's not like I'm the most happy with Thalia either. Thalia dies to Bowmasters. Thalia might not be enough to stop some of the combo decks that we're seeing. Thalia might come down too slowly or not have a high enough impact versus a show and tell. But I just think we need some things on the way to 3 and 4 mana. And I think Thalia is largely going to be a better speed bump than this. We also have a ton of creature-based removal. If we beat things with this deck today, the things that we are probably going to beat are going to be fair Dimir decks, because we just have Swords and Brutal Cathar and Palace Jailer and a whopping playset of Rest in Peace out of the sideboard. That's a decision that was in the original deck list that I think I am down with. If we just say, hey, maybe we will make ourselves a little worse versus Oops All Spells, and in return just absolutely dump on the Uros and the Goyfs of the world, I think I'm down with that. Now, the ORIM'S Chant is interesting. Something we have seen a lot on recent videos is that Deafening Silence is a fine card, but it isn't necessarily doing enough versus some combo decks. And ORIM'S Chant as white Time Walk, when you have something like Preeminent Captain in play that can just really spiral the game out of control, is pretty cool. ORIM'S Chant, when, maybe it sets up extra draws for Palace Jailer, or your Urza Saga going off so you can fetch your hate card. Like, there's some stuff to like there. And so maybe this might be better in a combo deck. Like, hey, I am going to try to go off and literally win the game in response to this. This might be something reasonable, worth trying. And I imagine that I would board this in versus most combo decks. We are definitely memeing a little bit today, but this can be very powerful. You are capable of starts like turn 1 Preeminent Captain, and the trigger here is on attack, not on combat damage. And so you can attack, put in a Captain of the Watch. It's a 3/3 body. You then have 3 2/2 Vigilant Soldier tokens and a 3/3 First Striker. Like, that is a legacy power level play. So let's see if this pays off. Here's Soldier Stompy. Folks, if you need any cards for this deck, please consider checking out my sponsor, toamagic.com. They are absolutely fantastic. Promo code ThrabenU saves you 5% on your order. If you're going to Vegas, you need some sweet Final Fantasy cards or anything else to round out your decks for their events there, check them out. They tend to have 95% of all standard legal stuff in stock at any given time, and they also have a bunch of sweet old cards that you're likely to like. All right, I droned on there for a while, so let's hop into the league.
This one is not going to do it for me. We have double Chrome Mox. I don't really have anything that's worth powering out. I have multiple reactive cards here. Lava Spur Boots aren't doing a ton on this board. So this I keep and I pitch a Chrome Mox. And we just kind of decide how saucy we're getting with this Palace Jailer based on what we see from our opponent very early on here. Combo. Fuck. Not what we want to see. Esper Sentinel is an okay draw. Quick note here, this is an artifact creature, and Chrome Mox makes you exile a non-artifact, non-land card. So even though this is white, we can't put this under Chrome Mox, at least not successfully. For anti-combo stuff, what do I actually have? Not great. That's what the entire sideboard is for. All right, so unless we luck sack into drawing Thalia, or unless Soul Guide Lantern can do something. We're probably dead here. I think I am going to attempt to take an extra Esper Sentinel redraw here. I don't think I'm going to Chrome Mox Captain of the Watch immediately to play around days. That doesn't feel important here. This was good enough to get a response from our opponent, though. Just an Undercity Sewers. It is Force of Will pitching Consider. This probably means that I am playing against Doomsday. So with that information, do I now want to junk this? This is a lot of power that can come out of nowhere. I think I'm going to hold. The reason to Chrome Mox now is to play around Duress and Thoughtseize style effects. The reason to wait is that if my opponent halves their life total via Doomsday, this is going to be damn near a one-shot kill. Opponent gets their selection off, but then passes the turn. So this is really weird because of that Ancient Tomb draw. I could have 6 mana next turn, but is it just better to play Palace Jailer than to try to resolve this Haymaker? Like, is the Palace Jailer now that could potentially draw into Thalia better than the raw power? The raw power might not get to attack. Alright. It's sort of a shame. I'm not entirely sure that this line is correct, but I am going to take it. I'm just worried that if I make no play this turn, play creatures and pass next turn, that I'm just going to die. An immediate cycle Edge of Autumn for another Force of Will. That means my opponent is further away from casting Doomsday unless they have Dark Ritual, though, which I guess I'm fine with. This game is going to go on for longer than I expected. Opponent's hand is not actually great. That Brainstorm must not have delivered what they were actually looking for. Okay. We are doing some tempo Doomsday stuff. So I guess now we're hoping there is not something like a Kaito following this up. That would be really annoying. Or just a mid-range card like Murktide Regent. Hey, it's a mid-range card like Murktide Regent. F. Okay, well, I am probably just going to die to this. The way I don't die to that is by just making very large lifelinking construct tokens, I suppose. I will be taking 7 in combat, going to 8. Then I'll make some friends. 2/2 currently. Preeminent Captain doesn't really do anything here. Then I'll make some friends. Our 3/3s. It will be 4/4s with this artifact hitting play. I think just is Shadow Spear. I think we are doing this on the one that can attack. Go to punchies. Attack for 5. Opponent doesn't block. I think I go ahead and do this. It really only costs me 1 life to do that. So now I'm at 10, going to 16 the following turn. So I'm not going to die to 2 Murktide Regent hits unless another removal spell gets in the mix. And I can actually increase the amount of life that I gain by 2 next turn, while also potentially just giving my stuff haste as well. So there's another construct token. This is Lava Spur Boots, and that kills my opponent. That was very, very close, by the way. Like, I know this turn, like, I turned the corner and I'm very obviously winning, but I was, 1 removal spell away from death there, assuming my opponent is playing some number of removal spells. We have gotten confirmation, by the way, that they are very clearly Doomsday. I knew that from the time that I saw this Consider and the Lotus Puddle, but the Edge of Autumn and the Street Wraith that we saw cycled late in the game confirm that. So we have to decide how much anti-combo versus how much anti-fair stuff I want to be doing here. The Soul Guide Lantern can go. That's not really necessary. Against known Bowmasters, I might do something like go down on Esper Sentinel. I think I am in on trying to hedge strongly against the fair side of their deck, and then pad the early game with some stuff like Deafening Silence and ORIM'S Chant. Palace Jailer or Orcish Bowmasters is a little awkward, though. Maybe I don't actually go up on those all the way. Like, maybe I just have a pile of removal spells for the fair stuff and hope that I don't run into the Doomsday itself. It doesn't feel the best. Doomsday is notoriously good against decks like this one because the Thalia and Thorn of Amethyst and Deafening Silence style stuff don't actually stop their combo at the end of the day. This is fine. This is probably enough removal for Murktide Regents and friends. I've made myself slightly better versus Bowmasters and slightly better versus Doomsday. So this hand loses to Doomsday and is pretty resilient versus fair creatures with double removal spell. I get to make my stuff uncounterable for if my opponent has a slower game. I think I would be willing to keep this on 6. I think on 7 I fish for Ancient Tomb. This is not Ancient Tomb, but this is pretty darn good. I think I keep this and pitch a Thalia. Now this hand, as opposed to our first hand, this hand is much better versus Doomsday and much worse versus fair stuff. Basic Island, Tameo. Sure. Oh, and we're just going. Sure. Anyway, where's that first hand that has Swords to Plowshares? Where's that shit at? Alright. Yeah. I think I am giving up on stopping Doomsday here. I think I'm just going to put Deafening Silence under here and play Thalia with the hopes of hitting any mana source next turn to end up with Preeminent Captain into Captain of the Watch as something that will probably beat this. Yeah, but this is just sort of a frustrating way for the cards to line up. 2 mana Ponder is fine. I am just getting whacked for 4 while my opponent is queuing up card advantage. Murktide Regent will be live for next turn. I can pick up a Bowmasters to kill Thalia. Yep, this is a disaster. And I missed the land drop. I think at this point I'm dead, and I know it. Goif good. Old news. I have 9 removal spells for this sort of stuff. Maybe I need more than that. Like, maybe I do this. Then I am hedged versus Doomsday while primarily planning on beating the fair creature plan. I have to figure out how I'm playing this, but this is absolutely a keep. I think the Valiant Veteran goes under Chrome Mox, and I play Thalia before the Lotus Petals and Dark Rituals can come down. Just got forced. Sure. So my best draw here is probably a land to stick Palace Jailer immediately. My opponent plays out something like a Tameo on 1. I get to just Brutal Cathar it out of the way and move on with my life. There is a land. I think I am just going to pass the turn here and Palace Jailer or Brutal Cathar next turn. I don't think I want to get Urza's Saga ticking up immediately and 100% commit my mana into that. Probably a Surveil land. And opponent junks an LED. So the combo stuff is 100% still in there, which is expected. And now we've got the Brainstorm. Fetch to clear afterwards. And something is coming down. Okay, we're beyond ready for that. I think I just go for the Jailer here. I think the upside is pretty high on it. And we succeed. So now I get to start drawing some extra cards. And hopefully I can just dump a few bodies into play and keep my opponent from taking the Monarch back and ride this to victory. Getting a Valiant Veteran in play can also just mean that my stuff is less likely to die to Bowmasters. Alright, this is what I do not want to see. Because this now just means that my opponent can pivot into the combo, and I don't really have any pressure in play. And I don't have any Hate Bears in play. This is where I would love to draw an ORIM'S Chant. ORIM'S Chant plus Valiant Veteran would probably kill my opponent. Shadow Spear? If I give up on ORIM'S Chant being exactly the top card of my library, I Chrome Mox, Imprint, Brutal Cathar, Valiant Veteran, Shadow Spear, equip, get in for 4, and hope that changes the math on things like Street Wraith. Alright, so let's start here. I'm technically supposed to resolve the Shadow Spear before I do this. Yeah. Equip. I get to send in for 4. Opponent's at 3. I get my end of turn Monarch draw. Is it an ORIM'S Chant? It is not an ORIM'S Chant. Let's see if they kill me from 3. It is a Consider pile. Cycling Street Wraith, going to 1. Cycling Edge of Autumn. And unfortunately, that is the Thassa's Oracle. A singular point of life is the difference between life and death there. GG.
Today's video is sponsored by Moxfield.com. If you want to see upcoming sets, if you want to understand commander brackets, or if you just want an awesome place to store all, and I mean all, of your deck lists, Moxfield is the place. You can organize all of your decks by folders, and you can even change the views. You like visual, they've got that. You like text, they've got that. Check out my Moxfield Pro Field if you want to see all, and I mean all, of the decks that I've been cooking up.
Alrighty, my opening hand only has one mana source here. This is not going to do it. This second hand is very mediocre. I think I'm going to keep it and hope that Esper Sentinel ends up drawing me some cards. If it doesn't, this one's pretty bad. I think I'm going to keep and pitch Enlistment Officer. It is the card that is furthest away from doing something, even though it has a reasonable effect should I get there. That is Force of Will, pitching Murktide Regent. So we have Swords to Plowshares to answer a Tamiyo or a Goyf or something that's played out early. A new Esper Sentinel, that's fine. Opponent was not a fan of the first one, and is responding to the second as well. Tropical Island, and Brainstorm. So maybe Beans. Esper Sentinel in play, I'm fine throwing Shadow Spear out there now. I can equip it next turn. It's a little awkward if my opponent is like Bug Beans and they get to just Orcish Bowmasters this immediately. Hey, that's not bad. Ponder Shuffles. That is Boseiju. Ooh. Alright. Technically attack first, but I think this is fine. It resolves. Excellent. 17. Next turn I can get a Valiant Veteran into play. That's a Brainstorm. See if my opponent pays. They do. That means this stuff is less likely to get answered, meaning that Valiant Veteran hopefully just does some good work. I was just getting started. We have a pile of Rest in Peace in the sideboard. I'm going to assume that those are good. Beyond those, Cathar Commando and Palace Jailer are things I should probably be thinking about. I think I'm going to pull Soul Guide Lantern if I'm going to bring in a pile of Rest in Peace. Even if I don't know exactly what my opponent is doing, I think it is clear after seeing Murktide Regent that they are probably a fair graveyard-oriented strategy. Shutting off some number of Murktide Regents, Uros, Mystic Sanctuaries, like from the Loams, like that stuff is going to matter. Brutal Cathar is maybe medium here. I think I am willing to turn Brutal Cathars into the slower Palace Jailer. And potentially anticipating Beans and Leyline Binding, Cathar Commando is okay. It might be better than, say, Thalia. I think I am okay rocking something like this. This looks fine. I would like to draw another mana source, though. Misty Rainforest, pass the turn. Hey, we found a Thalia anyway. And we'll just kind of try to tax my opponent's resources early on. Again, I would really like to not play Urza's Saga next turn, if at all possible. Alright, Beans it is. So that's the tri-land to try to make Leyline Binding more castable. Alright, we got all the colors. And the ability to pay for the Esper Sentinel tax there, which is fine. Fantastic, that's exactly what I wanted. So now, is it Thalia, or do I just nuke the graveyard now? I think it's probably just Thalia. I would like Thalia to be a distraction, so that Preeminent Captain can do its thing. Opponent forgot about the Thalia tax, or mispaid for something here. It is up the beanstalk. But our Preeminent Captain is going to be Force of Will proof. Am I into activating Urza's Saga soon? I think I am. So that's uncounterable. I also don't think that my opponent has counterspells, just based on how this game has played out and the timing of their turns. So as a reminder, this is an on-attack trigger, so if my opponent can remove this, they want to do it, presumably on their own turn. And a Tamiyo, which I can remove, but it's a little annoying to remove. I think I am just playing Esper Sentinel here, and I'll crash on in. Opponent takes their free block. That's fine. So I'm going to go ahead and pass the turn here. I am okay with my opponent getting a clue from Tamiyo. Their cards are a little hard to utilize right now, at least efficiently. However, if my opponent goes for a Brainstorm and attempts to flip the Tamiyo, I will Swords to Plowshares it then. Okay, so Brainstorm trigger, my opponent will probably pay for Esper Sentinel. They do. I think this is where I just go ahead and Swords to Tamiyo at the cost of an Urza Saga token. Fantastic. Now we're going to move to my turn. Oh, I love that draw. That draw is quite good. I think I'm getting the boots here. I really want to throw down Rest in Peace this turn, but I can't due to my Thalia. So I think we're just getting in there with the booties. This is a swing for 7. And it looks like everything is going right. That's pretty lucky, honestly. Then second main phase, we're going to go ahead and move the boots over to Esper Sentinel so that if my opponent casts a spell, there is a greater degree of taxation there. Mystic Sanctuary or Swords. Is there a spell beyond that? Oseiju on Urza's Saga. Yeah, I'll use that ability. Up a basic Plains. This is equipped where I want it to be. This is fine. So the fear is that my opponent stabilizes the board with Murktide Regent before I get this Rest in Peace down. Doesn't look like that's what's happening. It is a Teferi. Yeah, you're not paying that tax. It's 2 now. Get a Preeminent Captain. You can junk this token. That was all in all a pretty strong sequence for my opponent. I'm slightly surprised they did not wasteland me. Oh, they've got another play. Oh, they're cracking a clue token. Sure. Well, now I just know that whatever I play resolves. I think that means my opponent is dead. Yeah, that means my opponent is dead. Because I get to play Preeminent Captain, give it haste, go to combat, attack your face, Preeminent Captain trigger, put in Valiant Veteran attacking you, and this is overkill, in fact. Yeah, so I think in that final turn cycle there, my opponent made like 3 separate mistakes. I don't know which cards were in their hand, so it's hard for me to say whether all 3 were mistakes. But potentially, before they did other things, they could have cracked the clue. They could have wastelanded me to kept me up, to keep me off of double spell or 3-drop plus equip. And if they were not going to do either one of those things, I think you don't tap out to leave the fear in me that I can't go all in. Like, if they leave some mana up there and I'm afraid of a removal spell, potentially I send Summit to Fairy and don't go for lethal that turn. I think they had a few different ways to play the end of that game differently. Similarly, it's possible that I needed to drop this Rest in Peace earlier in the game at the cost of some tempo to keep something like Murktide Regent from coming down. Now, admittedly, this exact game, Thalia was making my spells uncounterable, so I could have just Palace Jailered that out of the way and moved on with my life. But I think things could have fallen apart for me until this final turn of the game here. So I think there was actually quite a bit of nuance to this game and different ways to play things. Admittedly, it would have been a very small Murktide Regent. My opponent actually did not cast very many spells this game because of Esper Sentinel and Thalia. That was pretty interesting. GG's. I have a mediocre 7-card hand here. I would really like one more land drop. Ooh. Chalice of the Void. That's not something I care about too much, but it does mean that I am not going to have an easy time removing my opponent's threats. And I still just would like another land drop here. Okay. So we should be expecting things like Glaring Fleshraker and Karn and the One Ring from here. Opponent does not have a great play. I also don't have a great play, unfortunately. I think the play that I am taking is just Thalia. It could be taxing my opponent off of a Karn or the One Ring, or making some like key lines slightly worse, making some Kozilek's command lines slightly worse. My opponent topped their card though, which is not great for me. That's a full-on power plant as well. All right, there is Karn, and the Eldrazi spawn allows my opponent to cast that. I can kill this Karn in combat due to Valiant Veteran. Opponent goes for a Mystic Forge. So I've missed on my other land drop 3 times in a row, which makes me sad. But I kill this Karn, which probably makes my opponent a little sad. So we'll call that even. Oh shit, that is just Natural Tron. That is a very large Kozilek's command. Opponent is just going for replacing their mana and fishing for a better card. That could have been much worse for me, honestly. Half the cards went to the top. I am floating a mana here. I think I am getting a Chrome Mox. If I had one more mana, I'd get Lava Spur Boots to get hasty Preeminent Captain going. I'm going to go ahead and drop the Preeminent Captain now. And then maybe on my turn, I get to draw another land, play an Enlistment Officer pre-combat. Our opponent just takes all of it. I'm hoping to have lethal next turn, but there's some things like Ugin that will just say no to that. Oh hey, an Ugin. I'm down a creature already. My opponent got rid of the Thalia, meaning that they want to do a bunch of stuff with their mana. And now, every time my opponent casts a colorless spell, they get to nuke one of my permanents. Which, with 5 cards in hand, I imagine that that's lights out. One ring, not great. Fence Grid takes out my last creature. And unless my opponent kills themselves, I just can't win the game from here. And I think that is very unlikely since they can just gain 3 life and draw a card with Ugin every turn. I'm going to value my time here. So because we put Urza Saga into this deck, we don't get Wasteland. And this sort of matchup, Wasteland matters a lot. I don't need Soul Guide Lantern here. I do need Pithing Needle here. I do need Cathar Commandos here. Probably over Brutal Cathar. And I can be thinking about some amount of this stuff. Kind of my primary issue is that I need to kill my opponent. And so I need to be as aggressive as possible. So every time I board out a body, I decrease the chance that I can just outright kill my opponent. But I also can't really go down swords, even though my opponent is a Chalice of the Void deck, because I just need to be able to answer Glaring Fleshraker immediately. I think I'm going to add some extra Palace Jailers as something that I can turbo out via Preeminent Captain. I think this is meaning that I'm not playing this stuff, at least when I'm on the play. When I'm on the draw, maybe I think about ORIM'S Chant. Maybe Deafening Silence is important enough for the late game that I want to play it. Maybe I do that and get these in there. Kozilek's Command just really messes with my ability to just completely shut down my opponent's turns if I ORIM'S Chant. This doesn't really do anything. This will do something. Chrome Mox, Imprint, Valiant, Veteran, Cavern of Souls, Thalia on 1, Ancient Tomb Palace Jailer on 2. That's a real plan. Yeah. Soldier, and Thalia. There's a tower, another Palace Jailer. I actually don't mind that. Then if my opponent jumps ahead on mana and plays Glaring Fleshraker, I have an immediate answer for that, which is fine. I don't want another Thalia here. 2 pair is nice and all, but not what I'm looking for. All right, send it. 16, 14. I need to increase my power here. I have to be prepared for what happens if my opponent just naturally has the next Tron land. Okay. Metalcraft, not currently a thing. There is another Glaring Fleshraker. There is another Palace Jailer, though. Never didn't have it. I wasn't worried. 3rd Palace Jailer. Take out Glaring Fleshraker. Send it. That's 6 damage. A Cathar Commando is fantastic. Alright. Overran our opponent. Ancient Tomb confirmed good. Now, when I'm on the draw, do I want these ORIM'S Chants? Maybe it becomes less important to try and punk my opponent with Captain of the Watch on the draw, and just getting to casting some of this stuff in the first place is more important. Go down some Esper Sentinels, I guess. Okay. This doesn't feel overly impressive. And ORIM'S Chant at 2 mana is a lot worse than ORIM'S Chant at 1 mana. I wonder if I just cast this on my opponent's upkeep on turn 1, so I make it to my Thalia. Urza's mine. I don't think I cast ORIM'S Chant immediately. Planar Nexus. Well, that makes ORIM'S Chant look real bad. Okay. Oh shit. Let's fucking go. That was the literal best draw in my deck there. Because that means I don't need to spend any mana for the rest of the game on any threats. And ORIM'S Chant probably swings full circle into being good again. Urza's Workshop. The One Ring. Sure. What a fucking draw. What a fucking draw. I think I'm playing this as a land. So there's Pithing Needle. or the One Ring. I'll go to combat. I'll attack with Preeminent Captain. We'll put Thalia into play, attacking, and we're not doing any damage there because of the One Ring, but that's not why we were attacking. Note that I think the Trinisphere in play is a net positive for me, so I don't think we put Witch Enchanter into play there. And Thalia will still tax the more expensive spells, not really the cheaper spells. Opponent passes the turn, which means that Kozilek's command could be happening here. Go ahead and put this on Soldier. Are we Kozilek's commanding? We are, which is pretty annoying. Had some plans. Opponent takes 2, goes to 17. I was hoping to Witch Enchanter, get rid of Trinisphere, and then be able to play something and then ORIM'S Chant my opponent. I think I still need to ORIM'S Chant them, which costs me 3 mana. If I had 1 more land, that's not true anymore. Yeah, so I think this is a very awkward, inefficient ORIM'S Chant turn, and then hope to just draw something good. I guess I technically could have made it so their creatures could not have attacked, but that doesn't really matter here. Cathar Commando. Send in with Thalia. 14. I think I value holding up swords here. I think I'm just going to pass the turn. When it goes to 12. I think everything falls apart this turn. Okay. I can answer that. I like that a lot less. I think I'll swords. The opponent gets their Glaring Fleshraker friend, and Karn is worrying. Getting Ensnaring Bridge. I have Cathar Commando for that. Or Witch Enchanter. This Trinisphere is doing, like, just enough to be a nuisance. Oh, sorry, that is a human warlock. That is not a soldier. So bam. Take out the bridge. Go to combat. Send it Karn. We'll just take a chump on that pretty obviously, I think. And I, like, just don't have enough mana to, like, trample over or play multiple spells here. If I use this as a land... What is Perilous Snare? Whenever this enters, exile target non-land permanent. Okay, so Oblivion Ring with max speed, upside. So my opponent could just, like, get rid of my Pithing Needle here and start going nuts with the One Ring. But I guess I just end up Cathar Commandoing the Perilous Snare away. Sure. Take your cards. Oh, that's too much mana. Ugin's rough. Ugin's real rough. If opponent pluses and then casts another spell, yikes. So now I can get my Pithing Needle back and stop Ugin, leaving my opponent with Karn and the One Ring. I think this is the point where I can go ahead and concede, because, like, if I stop this, I stop the activated abilities, but I'm not stopping the static abilities at the top, so they can still just exile my shit. I think that'll do. That was a real close one, I think, despite how this looks at the end. GG. Alright, we're probably playing against Dredge here. Do I have the Graveyard Hate in Game 1? I do have the Graveyard Hate in Game 1. So I think I keep this hand as turn 3 Graveyard Hate is about the best that I can realistically hope for here. Turn 1 Thalia, also not terrible. I think I will go bam, play out Lava Spur Boots, and pass the turn. Misty Rainforest, and pass. I'm just going to make my friends here. I assume that we're going to see something like Otherworldly Gaze at end of turn. Bitch. Oh, are you playing something different today? No, I was right. No, I'm not going to complain about randomly spiking a Dredger. Their deck is, like, literally built to do that, so. No follow-up Dredger, though. Cabal Therapy can probably pop off pretty hard. Cephalid Coliseum will be great in a minute, but there's not Threshold yet. So, make a friend. Urza's Saga again. Get the Soul Guide Lantern. Take out a bridge. So, I think I don't leave up swords. I just go in for a big hit. And we see what happens. Opponent is at 10. This will be lethal next turn, in theory. That is fine. There's 5 cards in graveyard. Brainstorm will be 6 cards in graveyard. If there was 1 more card in graveyard, things get a little weird. Okay, there's Otherworldly Gaze. This might be the time where I have to pop the Soul Guide Lantern. so that my opponent can't do Cephalid Coliseum nonsense when they untap. I think I am fine with that. It is still possible for things to go wrong, but I think it is more likely that my opponent can pop off in response to my activation if I let them get their own turn. All right, just cast a Stinky. That's fine. So I can remove that without giving my opponent life here with Brutal Cathar, and then I have Lethal. Ooh, that is a Force of Will. But that costs my opponent a life, meaning that I can now Swords to Plowshares that creature, put them to 7, and then kill them. A second Force of Will! Alright, I've played a Plains this turn. I think I don't attack. I think next turn I just play Valiant Veteran and Shadow Spear, give Valiant Veteran haste, and then attack in for all of the damage at once instead of splitting it over 2 turns. Because this has pseudo Death Touch. And with 3 cards in graveyard and 2 cards in hand, I don't think I need to be too awful worried here. Another Stinkweed Imp. So Shadow Spear gives Trample. So at the cost of 3 mana, I equip a Shadow Spear here. That is 5. Oh, I can also Chrome Mox. Yeah, so on a 6 power creature, 4 always gets through, and then I just need to attack with both bodies. Yep. Okay. So Shadow Spear plus Equip plus Chrome Mox. Guess I didn't need to show that. Boop. Now that both of these are lethal, my opponent can't put 2 Stinkweed Imps here. All right. Did not expect to have to fight through double Force of Will there at the end. All right. I am into a playset of Rest in Peace here. I don't think I need Captain of the Watch in this, in this matchup. Unsure about ORIM'S CHANT. ORIM'S CHANT is a way to get me to Rest in Peace, but it's not actually doing a ton. My Valiant Veterans are pretty weak. My Enlistment Officers are also not, like, crazy good. Like, Palace Jailer that takes a creature out of the way is probably better. I'm getting very creature light. Like, if I play ORIM'S CHANT, it is probably in place of something like Esper Sentinel or more Valiant Veterans. Lava Spur Boots and Shadow Spear both have use cases in this matchup. The Brutal Cathars aren't outstanding, but again, they can matter for instances of like what we exactly saw that game. I think I'm willing to play like 2 ORIM'S Chants, but 22 creatures, even counting Urza's Saga as additional threats, that's still a little light. This is fine. Is fine good enough? Just Cavernous Souls, Chrome Mox, Imprint, probably Brutal Cathar, play Thalia on 1. I don't think this is better than a turn 2 Rest in Peace hand, honestly. This is a turn 2 Rest in Peace hand that has multiple different other plays. The Preeminent Captain might be the worst card here. It can get better quickly. Drop and immediate careful study. There's Poxwalkers and Golgari Grave Troll. I think I would like to give my opponent the opportunity to counter an Esper Sentinel, so Rest in Peace would be more likely to resolve. Didn't happen. All right. So Nature's Claim is expected. Here's the Cephalid Coliseum potential pop-off. Ooh, Ashen Rider. That means that there's a Dread Return package in there. There's also Life from the Loam. Now Cabal Therapy Poxwalkers can do some stuff. I get to draw a bonus card. Preeminent Captain came back. Multiple Poxwalkers. And now does my opponent name Rest in Peace? Swords to Plowshares, which is honestly a great name. Now, hopefully that's just the end of the turn, and there's no counterspell. That is the end of the turn. Attempt to drop Rest in Peace. Rest in Peace resolves. Fantastic. Now, we know that my opponent has Nature's Claim. We got one of them. There's probably 3 more in there. I will happily trade Esper Sentinel for a Poxwalkers so that I don't just die to it in fair combat. Like, I fully expect my opponent just launch all of these creatures at me directly. And I think I will fully just make this trade. Rest in Peace is still in play, meaning that that Poxwalkers is answered forever. And then hopefully I play a First Striker and I don't so much have to worry about this anymore. Oh, hey, that's a good thing to do with Preeminent Captain. Oop. All right, there is a Nature's Claim. Opponent has 2 cards remaining. They may or may not have more ways to get things into graveyard immediately, though. They had to use a Careful Study. to find that. So that was at themselves to get a Stinkweed Imp into graveyard. Hell yeah. This is a land? I think this is going to be a land. So let's just Soul Guide Lantern immediately, take out the Stinkweed Imp, go to combat, send on in, trigger Alice Jailer into play. Let's exile the Poxwalkers so that my opponent doesn't like block with that and end up getting it back later. All right, now here's where I would like to get a little lucky. Did not. Because my opponent could end up just taking the Monarch back here, which gives them more draws, which is not the greatest. I think I've got control of this game, though. Like, I think I attack, put in the Brutal Cathar, just sorcery speed, play out a Witch Enchanter as a bonus blocker, and then I think I'm good from there. Oh, right, they do get that back. Can I wait a turn on Rest in Peace? I think with Soul Guide Lantern in play I can. Oh, I messed up. Supposed to play the Witch Enchanter pre-combat. Because if my opponent has exactly Force of Will blue card, I'm punished for this line. Because this isn't a soldier, it is a human warlock. Alright, I'm not punished. Thalia is a great pickup. This is a very atypical match. This is very fun. Alright, there is Otherworldly Gaze. Again, I've got the graveyard covered. We're not to the point where Cephalid Coliseum is going to be active immediately. Alright, some goodies in there. Opponent holds back. And so now I think I've got this. So let's attempt to throw this down. My opponent has any nonsense that they can attempt with the graveyard. Like, this is their chance to try it, and then I snipe it with Soul Guide Lantern. Yeah, opponent says that's the nail in the coffin. GG. Alright. Good showing for soldiers there. Again, I do think we got pretty lucky to win game one. If I don't know my opponent's username there and know that they're on Manalist Reg and play Urza Saga on turn one to work towards game one Soul Guide Lantern, I don't think I win that one. GG. Okay, I have 2 mana, but most of the good stuff in my hand is at 3 mana. I could try to keep this on the draw. It's a little underwhelming. I think I'm going to keep it. I'm at roughly 50% chance per draw step to draw mana, so I think that's fine. Oh, shit. Okay. I mean, if I must. I think I actually imprint Valiant Veteran here. Not true. Maybe I imprint Swords? If I get Wastelanded, though? No, let's do this still. Alright. No Cavernous Souls to make this uncounterable or anything. Hopefully it works. There's Daze, there's Force, there's Fatal Push, there's just Entomb into Reanimate that kills me. But here's hoping. I don't think we've just had a turn one Preeminent Captain spiral out of control and just win the game instantly yet. There's a Daze. So I'm left with 2 removal spells and a mid-tier card. If Preeminent Captain worked, having this to increase my combat stats is quite nice. Just the Undercity Sewers again. So now I just play out Valiant Veteran, and then I've got 2 removal spells, one of which is permanent, one of which is slightly less permanent. This can probably be an ETB tapped land later. I think I'm going to attempt to save some life by playing this out like this. It's possible that I should not do it this way, and I should just take 2 damage to leave Swords to Plowshares up. But that would be a dazable Swords to Plowshares, which I don't love. We have not seen a Valiant Veteran activation from Graveyard this league. I rewatched my conclusion from the previous time I played Soldiers, and it came up multiple times throughout that video. Personal Tutor. Fuck, it's Doomsday. In which case, this stuff is significantly less good. Now I don't have, like, Wasteland to help me out. 17. I think I just play this out as the thing that has the most power. Yeah. And then I'm just passing the turn. We still have some insurance versus a Tamiyo or Goyf that's played out. But I'm very bad against that Doomsday. Yeah. You got it. Opponent has made their pile. Just take a quick skim here. Oh, they've got an Omen of the Sea. Haven't seen that in a little while. Cavern of Souls. Alright, so not so much with the game 1 creatures. I expect that I'm now going to die to some, like, Lotus Petal, Thassa's Oracle, Cycle of Street Wraither 2 pile. LED. So this is a Cycler into triple blue. Crack LED in response. There's Consider. And if opponent does this pile right, they beat Swords to Plowshares. They just cycle one last time. Now there's nothing in deck, and it doesn't matter if I Swords the Thassa's Oracle, unfortunately. We will, however, Swords the Thassa's Oracle out of spite and hatred for Merfolk. Unfortunately, our hatred for Merfolk is not enough to win this match. Okay. So, we'll probably do some amount of this stuff while keeping in some amount of hate for the pivot creatures, which I presume are coming. We need 7 cuts if I want all of this. It is possible that I don't need swords and 8 other removal spells. I could probably do this and cut like 2 captains and 1 enlistment officer. And that is a somewhat respectable pile of cards. Sure. Again, Deafening Silence is not the most effective versus Doomsday. It stops the Dark Ritual Doomsday kill you immediately lines, but it's often just buying time. So this is going to be turn 1 Deafening Silence, turn 2 Esper Sentinel, and I guess another Deafening Silence, I guess. And then we have turn 3 Palace Jailer, which hopefully draws me into Thalia or maybe Preeminent Captain to start trying to spiral the game. Palace Jailer means that I'm not going to really lose out versus the Waifs and Murktide Regent pivot plans that we might see from this deck. Underground Sea and a Ponder. That was a shuffle, so we've got that going for us. But again, this isn't the strongest start. I would really just prefer an Ancient Tomb Preeminent Captain start in this matchup. Getting to cheat on all of that mana while accelerating out combat potential is a big deal. Cavern of Souls is a big pickup. A little awkward if my opponent drops a Goyf right here, because then I don't have uncounterable immediately. So, how do I feel about Nakey Palace Jailer? 19. I would really prefer this Palace Jailer to be uncounterable. I don't know that my hand is good enough to not play a card this turn, though. Because like Doomsday is just on the table next turn. I don't think I get to wait to make this uncounterable. If I wanted to play towards this exact situation happening last turn, I could have not played a second Deafening Silence and played out an Ancient Tomb. I'm not sure if that is a correct line or that is just me talking, having seen the Cavern of Souls draw. Monarch draw. Preeminent Captain is fine. I'm just worried about my opponent casting Doomsday on their turn and winning the following turn through Deafening Silence. It is absolutely possible with the Street Wraith, Edge of Autumn type cards. Lotus Petal to Graveyard. Fatal Push. I'll draw a card with Esper Sentinel. ORIM'S Chant. Wish I had an extra mana for that. Although that might be perfectly fine for my next turn. I probably can't just die this turn through Deafening Silence. I could play Preeminent Captain uncounterably, hold up ORIM'S Chant my opponent, and then hopefully draw something else relevant between 2 draw steps and a Monarch draw. Okay, cool. Cavern's not what I am looking for. A little love tap here. 17. Cavern on Soldier. My life total does not matter in this matchup. There's Preeminent Captain. Monarch draw. That's not bad. Omen of the Sea. More cards for people named Phil. Yeah. So now, here's the ORIM'S Chant doing something. And it's not like my opponent gets to counter and stop that, because if they do, then they're not casting a Doomsday. My opponent did top both of those cards, FYI. That is a Brainstorm in response. So that's their one spell, unless they can play a Goyf. So there's land drop, and passing the turn. Okay, cool, no Goyf. Am I playing Valiant Veteran pre-combat? 2 mana Valiant Veteran, 3 mana Preeminent Captain, 1 mana or another ORIM'S Chant that I randomly draw. Seems fine. Maybe I hold back Brutal Cathar. I think that's always happening. Go to combat. Send it. I'm going to put in the other Preeminent Captain attacking. That brings my opponent to 11 and then 9. I think I hold that. I think I don't play that out. I can just do that on attack trigger next turn, and then a giant lifelinking creature doesn't bother me. Okay. A Doomsday past the turn line is not good enough anymore. I have a creature covered. And I drew another fucking ORIM'S Chant. ORIM'S Chant is the greatest card of all time. Cast. Target you. Boop. Deafening Silent. ORIM'S Chant. Combo of the day. Now, I do have to win another game, unfortunately. But that one was pretty damn convincing. Unfortunately, when I'm on the draw, it is a little harder to get that set up. Alice Jailer drawing those ORIM'S Chants was absolutely clutch. This is the Curse of Cavernous Souls right here. This is not a true white source, so this does not cast ORIM'S Chant and Deafening Silence. So I think this hand goes from insane to unplayable. I could keep this and try to spike specifically a white source as my top card. I don't think I'm into this though. This is great. We have a 1-2-3 curve that covers us versus a few different things. The issue here is that Dark Ritual Doomsday on turn 1 just absolutely leaves me dead. But we have dodged that. And now we get to deploy Deafening Silence into Thalia, into Valiant Veteran. Daze takes out Deafening Silence. So Dark Ritual Doomsday is live again on my opponent's turn. Yeah, there it is. So I think my opponent's pile is very, very likely to beat a Thalia. Alright, my opponent has made their pile. I mean, I'm on basically no decisions here, so if what they do beats a Thalia, which, again, I think it should, they handily win. Street Wraith. Cycle Edge of Autumn. Play land. Play Thassa's Oracle with exactly 2 cards remaining in deck. And we lose that one and end up with a 2-3 record in the league. Alrighty. Overall thoughts on the deck list here. I give it like a B. This felt solid. Our wins were 2-0s. All of our losses were 1-2. So, like, we were very much in it in every round. We very much played real Magic in every round. However, I don't think this deck is objectively all that strong. The deck has to play some number of overcosted cards to make Preeminent Captain better. Preeminent Captain is not a particularly good Magic the Gathering card. It's only as good as the rest of the deck supporting it is. And Current Legacy is all about singularly powerful cards. When you line this up versus Goyf, for example, it is very clear how big of a difference in power level there is between those 2 cards. And while Preeminent Captain can do some serious work in terms of cheating mana, it is, an Aether Vial with haste every turn. Like, that can be very powerful. But there are some downsides, like the soldier creature has to enter tapped and attacking, which sometimes means that you can be putting your relatively small creatures into danger. It felt like if we were playing against fair, slow blue decks, our just absolute pile of removal was very, very good against those. And when we weren't, I don't know how much I liked the deck. To make the Urza Saga package work, and the Urza Saga definitely did some heavy lifting in the league. So, like, don't think of this as me discounting that. But to make the Urza Saga package work, we have to go down quite a few soldiers. Like, it's at least 3 soldiers for the 3 artifacts. The Chrome Moxen would probably be in the deck anyway. And when you are going down, 3 soldiers and also trying to fit swords in here, I think that does take away from some of the soldier synergies. If you compare this to the Humans deck that I played the other day, I feel like the Humans deck comes out of the gate faster and more consistently than this deck does. This deck does some pretty cool stuff on 3 to 4 mana, but sometimes doesn't always have the best openers on 1 to 2 mana. I was not impressed by Valiant Veteran today. Preeminent Captain was a little feast or famine. I believe we never got an enlistment officer into play. I believe we never got a Captain of the Watch into play. Sideboard plan was solid. We won some games with ORIM'S Chant. We won some games with Rest in Peace. I think for what it is, this is pretty good. Gets my seal of approval for an F&M style event, but I maybe wouldn't take it to a competitive event. All right, folks, I think that's all I've got for you today. I hope you enjoyed the video, and I hope you all have a wonderful rest of the day. See ya!